They gave him a fallen queen like a trophy, a shattered crown in chains, laughter echoing like broken glass. But when Ryland bowed instead of mocking, something in the ruined monarch stirred. This isn't a tale of conquest or easy vengeance. It is a quiet kind of revolution, a human who lifts a broken ruler higher than any throne, and the way dignity, small acts, and stubborn kindness topple the cruelest jokes. Ready to see how a joke becomes a lesson the stars never forget? If you love stories where small kindnesses become legends, hit like and subscribe. It helps more people find this one. Drop a comment. Would you stand with Ryland or with the throne? Share the video if you want someone else to see how strength sometimes looks like mercy. Now, shall we dive into the full script? The room was filled with laughter, harsh, metallic, and cruel. The kind that didn't come from joy but from power. The kind that echoed in cold hangars after wars that had already gone too far. They brought her enchained. The fallen queen of Velrai, once feared, now broken. Her silver crown had been melted into a collar, her long crimson cloak cut to ribbons. Every step she took left a faint smear of dried blood on the polished floor. Around her, the soldiers of the united Terran Fleet smirked and jeered. They didn't see a monarch. They saw a prize. "Gift for you, Commander Ryland," one of them said with a grin. "From the High Council. They thought you'd appreciate a reminder of victory." The men laughed again. Someone threw a flag, the torn banner of Velrai, at her feet. Ryland didn't laugh. He just stared. Quietly. The way humans sometimes do. That unsettling stillness that hides something deeper. The soldiers waited for a reaction. A smirk, a word, maybe a cruel joke of his own, but none came. He simply said, "That's enough." The hangar fell silent for a second. Even the queen's ragged breathing seemed to pause. "She's a prisoner," Ryland continued, voice low. "Not entertainment." The soldiers exchanged glances. One of them scoffed. "Come on, Commander, she killed thousands of our people. You think she deserves treatment?" Ryland cut him off. "Not mockery." It was such a small sentence, but somehow it changed everything. The soldiers backed away reluctantly, muttering curses under their breath. When they were gone, the queen stood trembling, trying to hold herself upright with what pride she had left. "You defend me?" she rasped, her voice still thick with the strange melody of her people. "Even after what I've done to yours?" Ryland looked at her, his expression unreadable. "I don't defend you," he said. "I defend what's left of us." Her eyes narrowed. "Us?" "Humans," he said simply. "We don't win by becoming monsters." For the first time, she didn't know what to say. That night, he gave her a blanket, just a thin piece of woven fabric, ordinary, dull, nothing royal about it. But when he draped it gently over her shoulders, the queen's fingers trembled. No one had touched her without pain since her fall. Ryland didn't speak much. He gave her water, checked her wounds, and left her space. No grand speeches, no pity, just humanity. The kind that quietly restores a bit of light in someone who has forgotten what warmth feels like.
The base gossip spread quickly. Ryland's gone soft. Protecting an alien queen, can you believe it? They gave her to him as a joke, and he's treating her like an ally. Let them talk, he thought. They didn't see what he saw, because under the dirt and bruises, there was still a spark, something unbroken, something that refused to die, even after everything. 2 nights later, she spoke again. "You pity me?" Ryland didn't look up from his datapad. "No. Then why this?" She gestured weakly at the small, warm space he'd arranged. A chair, a folded blanket, a light that wasn't blinding. "Because you're alive," he said. The queen let out a low, bitter laugh. "Alive? My empire burns. My people scattered. My name erased. I am a ghost wearing skin." "Then maybe it's time ghosts learn how to live," Ryland replied. Her eyes flicked toward him, studying the human's face. No armor, no cruelty, just a quiet strength. "You are strange creatures," she whispered. "You fight with fury, yet heal your enemies. You hate, yet forgive. You win, yet mourn for those you defeat. Why?" Ryland gave a faint smile. "Because we remember what it feels like to lose." Days turned to weeks. The fallen queen began to heal, not just her wounds, but something deeper. She started asking questions, watching, listening to the humans she once called savages. She saw how they argued, laughed, cried, how they shared food, how they built small gardens even in the coldest bases, just to make things grow again. It was bewildering. The Velrai had built empires on dominance. The humans built meaning out of scars. And slowly, she began to see why the galaxy feared them, not because of their weapons, but because of their hearts. One morning, a young officer entered Ryland's quarters nervous. "Commander," he said, "orders from command. They want her transferred. They're done with her." Ryland frowned. "Done. Experiments over, sir. She's no longer useful. They want to send her to the archives." He didn't need to ask what that meant. Archives was a polite word for disposal. The queen overheard. For the first time in weeks, she looked frightened. Not angry, frightened. The kind of fear that only comes when someone has finally remembered how to feel again. When the officer left, she whispered, "Will you let them erase me?" Ryland's answer came after a long silence. "No," he said, "not like this." He stood up, straightened his uniform, and walked out. That same night, the alarms began to wail. Someone had tampered with the prisoner records. Security logs deleted. Transfer canceled. The queen sat in the dark, clutching the blanket he'd given her, hearing footsteps approach. Ryland entered, carrying a small data drive. He placed it in her hands. "Your name, your history, your people." I backed it all up. Her throat tightened. "Why would you risk this?" Ryland looked at her, calm, steady. "Because they thought giving you to me was a joke. I decided to make a lesson." Later, when command demanded to know why the transfer was delayed, Ryland simply said, "She's not finished teaching us yet." And in that single act, quiet, defiant, and human, the joke began to unravel. Because somewhere deep in the stars, an alien queen who had once been a symbol of defeat was learning, for the first time, what it meant to be lifted, not as a ruler, but as a person. And the human who refused to laugh became the reason her legend would rise again. The days after the incident felt different. The air itself seemed to carry something unspoken, tension, whispers, and the faint pulse of defiance. Ryland didn't say anything about what he'd done. He still trained, still filed reports, still wore his uniform like armor. But behind the calm routine was a quiet rebellion, and she noticed it. The fallen queen, Lana, as he learned her name truly was, sat in silence most mornings. Her chains were gone now. Ryland had replaced them with a simple band on her wrist. A tracker, yes, but one that didn't bite into skin. It was such a small gesture. Yet to her, it felt enormous. She'd been born into a world where power was defined by fear, where mercy was weakness. And here, this strange human kept breaking every rule she'd ever known. One morning, he brought her tea. Not rations, not synthetic water, actual tea. Steam rising, scent of mint and soil. Lana blinked at it like it was a weapon. "You waste supplies on me?" "Not waste," Ryland said, sitting opposite her. "Just share." She looked down at the cup, her reflection rippling in the surface. "In my world, no one shared with the fallen." "In mine," he said softly, "we build people back up." For a long time, she didn't drink. Then, slowly, she lifted the cup. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but something else, the weight of being treated like a person again. When the warmth touched her lips, something in her chest cracked open. She blinked quickly, as if angry at the tears she didn't understand. Ryland pretended not to notice. The base began to change too, not openly. The soldiers still saluted, still joked in the mess, but whispers followed every act of kindness. Someone left extra fruit for her in the mess hall. Someone else offered her an old datapad so she could read. A mechanic fixed her bracelet quietly, claiming it was faulty. The cruelty that had once filled the air was fading, replaced by something more dangerous, respect. And it all started because one man decided not to laugh. That evening, as the suns of Terra 9 sank beneath the dusk horizon, Ryland and Lana stood outside the hangar. The sky was purple fire. She watched it, silent, then said, "When I ruled, I never saw sunsets, always under ceilings of steel and glass. We thought the universe existed only to be controlled." Ryland looked sideways at her. "And now, she said, voice quieter, "I think control is an illusion. Maybe the only real power is to stop taking." He smiled. "We call that wisdom." Lana chuckled faintly. "In Velrai, we call it surrender." "Then maybe surrender has a better name," he said. There was a pause. "The kind that isn't empty. It's full of everything left unsaid." Then she asked softly, "Why do you do this, Ryland? Why risk your name, your career, for a stranger?" He thought for a long moment. "Because someone once did it for me." Lana turned to him, curious. "Another queen?" He shook his head. "A nurse on a mining colony. I was a kid when the reactor failed. I was supposed to die. She pulled me out, burned half her body doing it. Nobody remembered her name, but I did, because she taught me something. Survival means nothing without mercy." Lana's eyes glimmered. "Mercy," she repeated, like tasting the word for the first time. She looked up at the stars, once hers, now distant strangers. "If your people ever conquer the galaxy, it won't be with weapons." Ryland tilted his head. "Then with what?" "With hearts that refuse to harden," she said simply. But not everyone agreed with Ryland's mercy. Captain Dren, the officer overseeing security, didn't hide his disdain. One night, he cornered Ryland in the briefing hall. "You're coddling her," Dren said. "She's the reason for half the graves on this base." Ryland met his glare. "She's also the reason the war ended. She surrendered when she could have fought to extinction. She surrendered because she lost." Dren barked, "Don't confuse defeat for peace." Ryland didn't respond immediately. Then quietly he said, "And don't confuse cruelty for strength." That shut Dren up for the moment, but his eyes promised trouble. Later that night, Lana found Ryland in the workshop, tightening a bolt on a drone. "You argue with your own," she said. "Because of me." He smiled without looking up. "That's what humans do best." "Fight." "Disagree," he corrected. "Keeps us honest." She watched him, the glow of the console lighting his face. "You risk too much." "And you worry too much," he countered. For a moment, her regal mask cracked into a smile, real, small, fragile. She reached out, touching the drone surface. "You build things," she said softly. "We only ever built walls. Maybe it's time you learned how not to." The next morning, something unexpected happened. Lana appeared in the mess hall, not escorted, not ordered, just there. Every conversation froze. Dozens of soldiers stared, some with suspicion, some with shock. And then she did something no one expected. She took a tray, poured water, and sat with the engineers. "May I?" she asked, polite but steady. The silence cracked, then a nervous laugh, a shrug, a few quiet nods. And just like that, the wall between queen and enemy began to crumble. That night, Ryland found a single folded note under his door. Her handwriting, precise and curved. "They once called me Your Majesty, but today, someone called me Lana." It felt heavier than any crown. He read it twice. Then he smiled, the kind of smile that only comes when you realize history is quietly changing. And somewhere beyond the base, in the dark corners of the galaxy, the name of the fallen queen began to travel again. Not as a tyrant, but as a whisper. A human had given her back something no empire ever could. Dignity. And soon, the stars themselves would notice. The nights on Terra 9 were quiet in a way that could make even soldiers uneasy. No sirens, no war drums. Just the hum of distant generators and the hiss of alien wind across the metal plains. Lana often stood by the observation window when the base slept. Her reflection, pale, scarred, and no longer crowned, stared back at her like a ghost that refused to fade. But tonight felt different, because Ryland joined her. He didn't speak at first. He just leaned against the railing, eyes on the dark horizon. The twin moons hung low, bleeding light into the clouds. Finally, he said quietly, "You used to own stars like these, didn't you?" Lana didn't answer right away. Then, softly, "I thought I did." She turned her head, studying the faint lines of his face in the moonlight. "Do you know what it means to command 1,000 worlds, Commander?" Ryland smiled faintly. "I barely command a kitchen schedule." That made her laugh, an honest, fragile sound that filled the silence between them. Then her voice lowered. "Power is a poison that pretends to taste like purpose. I believed ruling made me strong. But every order, every conquest, made me smaller. Until I became this." She gestured at herself. The scars, the hollow eyes. Ryland didn't interrupt. He let her speak. "I built empires that stretched across galaxies," she continued. "Yet the first time someone handed me tea without fear, I almost cried. What does that say about me?" "It says you're finally human," Ryland said quietly. Lana's lips curved, not quite a smile. "That's the cruelest kindness I've ever been given." After that night, their conversations grew longer. At first, they spoke of small things, music, food, the weather patterns of old Earth. Then, slowly, Lana began to tell her story. How her own generals betrayed her. How a rebellion she had funded for peace turned into the war that destroyed her. And how, in her last act as queen, she activated a secret beacon. A failsafe no one else knew about. Ryland frowned. "A weapon?" "No," she said. "A truth." He looked puzzled, so she explained. It was called Project Veil. It stored everything the Velrai Empire erased. The names, the faces, the planets we silenced. I thought if someone ever found it, they'd understand we were never gods, just scared children with bigger guns. Ryland stared at her, the weight of her words settling deep. "And this beacon still exists?" She nodded. "Hidden in the Veil Nebula. But it can only be accessed by 2 signatures, mine and one other." "Who's the other?" She hesitated. "Then the human who defeated me." Ryland froze. "General Asher?" Lana nodded. "Your war hero, the one who ordered my capture." The next day, a coded message arrived at the base. High Command was sending General Asher to inspect the prisoner. Lana's hand trembled when she read it. Ryland saw it. "You don't fear him," Ryland said softly. "You fear what you'll become when you see him again." Her eyes flashed, then softened. "I fear I'll forget who I've become because of you." Ryland said nothing, but his heart, hardened by years of war, suddenly felt heavier. The night before Asher's arrival, the base was still. Lana couldn't sleep. She went outside again, the cold wind pressing against her thin cloak. And once more Ryland followed. "Tell me," she said suddenly, "what do you believe happens after death?" Ryland blinked. Heavy question. "I need an honest answer." He looked up at the stars. "I think stories happen. Not the ones we tell, but the ones others tell about us. That's how we live on." She turned to him. "Then promise me something." "What?" "If I don't survive what's coming, if Asher kills me or takes me away, find the beacon, finish what I couldn't." Ryland hesitated. "Why me?" "Because," she said, "you're the only one who never asked what it could give you." When General Asher's ship landed the next morning, the base fell into parade formation. The soldiers stood tall, saluting. Ryland did too, until he saw Lana flinch at the sight of the man stepping off the ramp. Asher was the kind of human who reminded the galaxy why it feared Earth. Tall, cold-eyed, voice sharp enough to cut through armor. "Commander Ryland," he said, "I hear you've grown attached to our little trophy." "She's not a trophy," Ryland said evenly. Asher's lips curved. "Careful. Sentiment kills faster than bullets." He turned to Lana. "So, Your Majesty, still proud of your little empire of ash?" She met his gaze without bowing. "I learned pride is the dead." Asher laughed, short and sharp. "Then maybe you're halfway there." The soldiers laughed too, but only a few. Most of them looked uneasy. Ryland's silence carried a strange power now. Later, in private, Asher confronted him. "You've been shielding her, Ryland. Feeding her. Talking to her. You think I don't see it?" Ryland didn't flinch. "She's not an enemy anymore. Once a serpent, always a serpent," Asher growled. "And once a human," Ryland said quietly, "always responsible for what comes next." Asher slammed a hand on the desk. "She destroyed planets." Ryland leaned forward. "And we bombed cities. Don't pretend our hands are clean." For a moment, both men stared at each other. Two sides of the same war, neither willing to look away. Then Asher said, low and dangerous, "You'll regret this mercy." That night, alarms blared again. But this time, it wasn't Ryland's doing. A signal pulsed across the base, coded, elegant, unmistakably Velrai. Lana had activated something from her cell. When Ryland reached her quarters, she stood before a flickering hologram. A map of the Veil Nebula, coordinates glowing like a heartbeat. "You sent the signal," he said. "Yes," she whispered. "It's time." Time for what? For truth to speak. And as he stepped closer, she looked at him, not as a prisoner, not as a queen, but as someone who finally understood what freedom meant. "Ryland," she said softly, "tomorrow he'll take me. But tonight, let the stars know we tried to be better." The beacon's pulse vanished into space. No one knew it yet, but across distant systems, machines long thought dead began to wake. Recording, transmitting, remembering. The story of the Velrai's fall, the truth of their sins, the humanity they had mocked, now echoing again. And when the light touched the farthest edge of the stars, a single name whispered with it. Ryland. Morning came like a slow wound. The base buzzed with tension, soldiers whispering as the crimson banners of General Asher's shuttle snapped in the wind. Lana stood in the center of the hangar again, but this time, no chains, no guards holding rifles, only silence sharp enough to cut. She looked smaller somehow, yet infinitely larger in presence. Calm, regal, defiant, Ryland stood across from her, eyes unreadable. He knew what this day meant. The transfer order was clear. She was to be taken to the capital for final judgment. It wasn't a trial. It was a show, a political execution, meant to remind the galaxy who ruled now. But Lana didn't flinch. Not anymore. Asher strode in, boots echoing across the floor. "Queen of Ashes," he said, "your time as a guest has expired." Lana met his gaze evenly. "And yours as a conqueror soon will." Asher laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You think sending a few ghost signals will change anything?" "You misunderstand," she said quietly. "It's not about changing the past. It's about ending the lie." Asher frowned. "The beacon?" "Yes. The veil speaks now," she said. "Every world you burned in my name, every atrocity buried beneath your flags, is being remembered." Asher's composure cracked for the first time. "You think the galaxy will pity monsters like you?" "No," she said. "But they will finally see that monsters are not born only among my kind." Ryland watched the exchange silently, his mind a storm. He had stood beside Asher once, back in the first invasion. He had believed in him, believed in the idea of order through victory. Now he only saw a man terrified of truth. When the guard stepped forward to seize Lana, Ryland's hand twitched toward his sidearm, but he didn't move. Not yet. Lana's eyes found his, calm but sharp as glass. "Don't," they seemed to say. "Not like this." Asher turned to Ryland. "You've done your part, Commander. I'll take it from here." Ryland's jaw tightened. "And what happens after?" "After?" Asher smirked. "The galaxy forgets again, as it should." Ryland stared at him, really stared, and realized something that chilled him to bone. Asher didn't want peace. He wanted control. And for the first time in years, Ryland felt the old soldier inside him break ranks. Hours later, as the transfer ship prepared for departure, Ryland walked to the hangar one last time. Lana was already inside the containment chamber. Not locked, just seated, waiting. She turned when she heard his footsteps. "So," she said softly, the joke end where it began. "Not if I can help it," he said, her brow furrowed. "Ryland." He shook his head. They can take you, but they don't get to decide what story survives. He held out a small device, a data crystal. Backup copy of the beacon's coordinates. I encrypted it under my ID. Even if they erase you, the truth will live. Her hands trembled as she took it. You'll be hunted. Humans always are, he said with a faint smile. She wanted to speak, but the words didn't come. Instead, she reached forward, fingers brushing his hand. The gesture was simple, but in that small touch was everything the galaxy had forgotten. Forgiveness, respect, and something dangerously close to love. Moments later, Asher appeared at the doorway, impatience cutting through the air. Commander, step aside. Ryland did, but not in the way Asher expected. He moved to stand in front of the containment door, hands clasped behind his back. You'll have to arrest me first. Asher froze. What did you say? I said you'll have to arrest me, because if she goes, I go, and if I go, Command will start asking why. The soldiers looked at each other, uncertain. Asher's face turned dark. You're out of line, Ryland. I'm exactly where I need to be, Ryland said quietly. The hangar fell into dead silence. You could hear the hum of the engines, the slow hiss of hydraulics. And then Lana stepped forward. Enough, she said. She placed a hand on Ryland's shoulder, her voice steady. Do not throw your life away for mine. He turned, meeting her eyes. It's not your life I'm fighting for. It's what it means. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Asher spoke again, voice low. You always were romantic, Commander. Thinking mercy makes you special. Ryland's gaze was calm. No, it just makes me human. Asher's jaw clenched. Arrest him. But the soldiers didn't move. Not one. They'd seen the way Ryland treated the Queen. They'd seen the quiet strength that needed no orders, no medals. And they'd started to believe in it. Asher's voice rose. I said arrest him. Still nothing. Then one soldier murmured, with respect, sir, maybe he's right. It spread like a ripple, hesitation, then defiance. And just like that, the entire hangar, once a throne of mockery, became something else, a moment of rebellion. Asher's fury boiled over. He reached for his weapon, but Ryland was faster. In one smooth motion, he disarmed the general and aimed the blaster toward the ceiling. The shot cracked like thunder. Enough! Ryland barked. No more lies. No more trophies. This ends today. The room fell still again. Asher stood, seething, eyes full of venom. You think this changes anything? You think mercy wins wars? Ryland lowered the weapon. No, but it wins souls. He tossed the blaster aside. Asher spat. You'll lose everything for her. Ryland shook his head. No, I'll finally keep something worth having. In the end, Asher was detained under investigation, the kind of bureaucratic pause that said everything without admitting anything. Lana was quietly released into Ryland's custody for temporary humanitarian oversight. No one called it freedom, but it was. That night, the base was silent again. But this time, it wasn't tension. It was peace. Lana and Ryland stood under the stars once more. The beacon signal still echoed somewhere out there, rippling through the void. You could have let me go to die, she said softly. I could have, he admitted. But then humanity would have lost its soul again. She smiled faintly. You risked everything for a fallen queen. He looked at her. No, for a risen one. And as the night deepened, a soft light shimmered on the horizon, a response signal from the Veiled Nebula. The truth had found its way home.